Nobody likes salespeople. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I had some really big transactions which I've done, which I'm looking back still very proud of. Really big transactions that I did, and I paid a price for it as well, right? It was not all, but I had a fast career. I made considerable amount of money for the firm. Nice.
And I've been on some good, some really good conversations. Just getting opinions of the online space in general.
Good.
Sales, obviously, but trying to bring in a little bit of outside perspective.
And you should. So we get a little bit out of our zone and a hyper-focused vision, right?
Oh my goodness. Is that the words? That's the right words right there.
I know. We've known each other for how long? Let me see. 3 years almost right now, right?
3 years, I think.
Probably 3 years.
Yeah, we got connected a while back. I'm always intrigued where people progress to and from, you know, when they bounce inside the sales space. There's some observations that I've noticed. It's been confirmed by others. It's been challenged by others as well, which is I think is really good. You've been in sales for a while, which we can dive into. But how long have you been like specifically doing online sales, like in this particular?
So specifically online sales, it was
what did you class like remote? Yeah,
it was 2020. I've been in an interesting like parkour, if you want, because I've been in sales many years ago, but in a very different space. Right? I was I did the classic, let's say, school university thing. Graduated from my university, it's been European, and I went to London and started my career in sales there. Worked for 2 large international banks. One was Credit Suisse. This was Credit Suisse. First Boston, first, and the names changed, and the other one was Merrill Lynch. So I was on the trading floor, but we needed the sales force, right? You have financial products, and then you need a sales force to actually, push the product through serving institutional investors. So I did 10 years of that. But prior to that, I was always around sales somehow. Small jobs here and there were always really around selling anything from newspapers to cigarettes. I've done all of that when I was younger, right? So I've done that for 10 years. And then I had a career shift, very radical one. That's who I am. Always a little bit extreme. Let's put it this way. I went to photography for about, let's say 8 years. So I was in London for 10. I quit that job. I moved to Guatemala, where I'm still in now. And I transitioned and became a photographer for about 8 years. All of that sounds completely crazy. It has a lot of logic behind it, or now I can see it at least. And then in 2018 and 19, I was living in Dubai as a photographer. And I came back late 2019 to Guatemala for just a few months. And I was ready transitioning out of photography again into a bit more of the business world. And this is how I started the remote sales again, right? We know most of us, right, ended up locked up and whatnot everywhere in the world. Right? So we needed to become resourceful again, right? And I actually love this now. I can work from anywhere. I can work from Guatemala. I can use a lot of my sales skills, my previous experiences, but I can use a lot of my photographer's skills as well. Sounds strange, but I was photographing tribes. I traveled a lot through Southeast Asia. I went to remote regions, and you had to connect with human beings, right? You photograph strangers out of nowhere, and a lot of that is part of sales, especially in what we do, right? You meet a complete stranger on Zoom. You kind of have to create trust very, very early on. Right? Nobody likes salespeople. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, there's a stigma about it. For
there
sure.
is, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
nobody likes salespeople. Not even salespeople like salespeople,
Yeah.
right?
I think, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty common theme, I think.
But how
That sort of
come?
goes
Right?
around, you know?
Isn't that a
I
paradox?
don't, yeah, I mean, I love hanging around sales. It depends what we're talking about, I guess. You know, I think that's
Yes.
probably more the point. You know, but it's interesting what you said about well, it communication, right? Like if you're visiting tribes, I mean, they're not necessarily multilingual, or you know, they don't necessarily communicate through speech, right? Like how do you find being able
Well,
to break those barriers?
that was interesting, but it's becoming non-threatening to them, right?
Mm.
So it was not through took obviously years to find it out as well, but like it happened because you are not threatening to them. So you come as a stranger into their world,
Mm.
and I don't become the focus point there, right? So and I focus on them, and I think the biggest part is being somehow disarming, non-threatening to them, so that
Yes.
they invite you in and don't see you as an intruder, especially as a photographer, right? Because you have your camera
Mm.
equipment with you, right? It's very intrusive, very
Yes.
intrusive.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
It's
I think
very
just having a camera is just
just
generally
having the
speaking.
camera, meeting. I went to all these tribes throughout Southeast Asia. Some of the villages had never seen a Western man, so it was.
You're a proper
I
foreigner to
used,
them,
I,
right? Yeah.
yeah, I used some guides as well. But I always
Mm.
told the guides, don't focus on me. Just like speak to them,
Yes.
make them comfortable. I'm just going to do nothing for maybe 2-3 hours, maybe more. When I say do nothing, it's just sit, observe,
Observe.
smile,
Mm.
and they'll forget somehow that they never completely forget, but they don't see me as a threat, in a sense.
As a
I'm not
threat.
going to
Mm.
start photographing them straight away. I would
Yes.
spend hours and hours not doing anything, sitting around the fire with them, whatever, watching
Mm.
them interact, and gradually I would introduce the camera.
Mm. Yeah.
Photographing a dog, for example, or a chicken, whatever it is, just to show that I was doing an action that was, again, slowly evolving into photographing them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Right?
some lessons in there I can already hear, like in the way that you sell. Right? Disarming, introducing certain
Disarming
concept when it's the right time
when it's
to
the
do
right
that.
time, indeed. Reading the
Mm.
room, right? Reading the room, reading the body language as well. And we have that on Zoom. You know when someone is engaged, and you know when someone switched
Mm.
off.
Yes.
You know when someone jumped on a Zoom call and he's doing something else.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just a protection mechanism, right? I'm scared of this call because I know it's a sales call.
Yes.
I'm going to protect myself by not taking the time that I should, because you tell me so, and I'm not going to do that, right? So a lot of it is just disarming them
Mm.
and not coming over as a threat and forcing them
Mm.
on the seat, but just calling it out gently, smiling,
Mm.
always controlling your emotions, because we feel wrestled because the prospect is not doing what we want, right? And the biggest challenge is
Mm.
staying calm. And internally
Controlling.
you
Yeah.
fume, right? But like,
Yes.
but you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
show it.
that's a great point. What's I mean, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on like you said, staying calm, but what and maybe disarming some people. But what are the opposite ways that you've seen? And I know you work with a lot of salespeople. What are some of the ways that you've seen is not the right way to do it? And I mean, I commonly see that more than not, right?
Here's the catch. What's the right way and the wrong way?
Mm. Yeah.
For me, what I see not working is using force and authority on someone else. I personally don't believe in that. Now, certain people may
In what
think
way?
that's using a convincer mode, or forcing you to a certain truth which is ultimately not yours, right? So you can
Mm.
use intimidation,
Mm.
threats, attacking someone's ego and everything to get along, to get yourself forward, so to speak. I've never used that, not even when I was in banking, and never used it in banking actually. I've been always reflecting what worked so well in banking, and a lot of it was, again, the disarming part. When you're not a threat, you will uncover a lot more things from your prospects, from your clients and prospects, whatever you call it. So I'd rather do it that way. So they don't see me as a threat. They don't see me as someone that's going to force them into a certain direction, but I will guide them there.
Yes. Right? Big difference, right?
Personally, I really believe so. And I think it works with any prospects that I've seen. The biggest challenge is you have to, it's a difficult term, but like you have to be mature sort of internally. Yes. And trust me, I wasn't always like this. I mean, I can be full of energy, and sometimes a long time ago in my career, there's a certain situation where I would explode a little bit more, be more assumptive. And
yes.
But over the years, I learned to calm down, and I learned that actually the biggest enemy on the sales call, on a negotiation, it's not the person on the other side of the table. It's me. It's how I'm reacting to the words, or it's how I'm reacting to the other person's emotions. I'm my own worst enemy, and I have to use compassion and understanding to disarm the person on the other side.
You just brought up a really good point about controlling yourself and your reaction.
Yeah.
If I can ask on that, because some of the sales training, I mean, that I've been involved with, not necessarily from the online space, but outside the online space, and even some, like in terms of reaction. Usually when we say reaction, if someone says this, you say this. If someone says this, you say this. But like we're talking about like an internal reaction, right? Like how do you mean, is it different? Or are you saying like if someone says this, okay, I have to react a certain way, say some certain word tracks, or like guide them in a particular direction, or how do you mean specifically there?
Good question. The actual thing is, you'll notice it on everyday life. When everybody says something, usually there's a meaning behind it.
Yes.
And when someone is defensive, a little bit more aggressive with you on the start of a call, there's a reason for that, right? So you can react and be more instinctive. So I attack you, you attack me, and vice versa. Or you can try to understand, what is the meaning behind this? Why is he coming so defensive on the call? Right? So instead of answering that direct question or that threat, you actually try to understand where is that person coming from, and you help them share that concern, reservation, fear. Usually it's fear, right?
Yes.
And once they vocalized it, they realize how probably ridiculous that is, or not so important, right? And then you can get the real conversation starting. But you'll see it on the daily basis. You're out with friends and they ask you a question. There's always something behind that question. The question itself is never a real point they're trying to just uncover. There's always something behind it.
Something behind it.
Simple example is with your wife. Are you hungry right now, right? She's asking you that question. Well, ultimately, maybe she has something else in mind. Maybe she wants to know why you didn't go to do the groceries. Now the fridge is empty, right? And she's not going to say that. She's going to ask, are you hungry right now? Oh, yes, I am. Well, go and get some groceries because the fridge is empty. Now you call, right? Now you're like, oh, damn. Let's go. Always clarify. Always clarify. And you'll see that most of our communication is always, in that sense, slightly broken. We never really say what we mean.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Uncovering that, instead of like doing the ping pong, just uncover that, disarm it. Now you have potentially the real conversation starting.
And that's kind of how you work yourself to the truth of the conversation, right? You uncover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it goes with everybody, with your wife, with your children, with your friends, with the prospect, with the client, whoever. And then you can actually start uncovering the real concern or problem, right? Otherwise, you stay surface level, and you never really actually tackle the real problem.
Yeah, I think that's it's a difficult thing to do for most people, is to get underneath the surface level.
Yep.
And usually what I find, and when I'm reviewing calls, and maybe it stays at the surface level, or they try to uncover that, it's really awkward.
It is.
They uncover it in like it's in a non-direct way that it makes the prospect uncomfortable, almost to a point like, why are they asking this? Yeah, like I just don't get it. Like, why are they asking? Why are they asking me all these things? What I had for breakfast and how I'm feeling about certain things, or
Yeah.
sometimes that probing doesn't come off in the right way. And I think you have to probe through things, but like more direct and more specific, right? Like, what's your take on that? Because I know you got a reaction out of that.
Yeah. No. It's interesting, but it's how you do it, right? So if you gentle, compassionate, empathetic about it, you will get to the truth, and the prospect will allow you, or the person on the other side, your friend, whoever, will allow you to ask these questions. But you have to do it carefully. And I don't know. I have a very curious personality. I always wanted to know more and dig for the truth. And when I was not satisfied with an answer, I would go for more and more until I got what I believe was the truth. So I like to do that on calls. But I learned over the last few years, obviously, a lot more to be more cautious about it, right? Because the closer that you are to the truth, the more the prospect is likely to feel disrespected,
Yes.
right? Especially on a sales call, right? You're talking to a stranger about money, problems, things that he's probably haven't even shared with his wife or his friends. And he's talking to you about it. And remember, the beginning of our conversation is salespeople are not safe. We don't like them, right? So you're always one word, one intonation away from probably triggering the defense mechanism of a prospect, right? So you have, once you get closer to the truth, be gentle with them and encouraging. So it comes with like a lot of softening of your language, asking for permission. Just that, for example, or asking for permission to ask a challenging question or a difficult question or personal questions. The prospect will tell you, sure, go ahead. Are you sure? Yes. Then you can ask that challenging question and you will not have him offended because you want him.
Yes.
You invited that conversation to happen. So that's a way to achieve that, I think. And this nurturing part is actually, I would almost say, a superpower, because you will actually get to the truth. When you're too blunt, you will have the resistance. You really never know if the answer you're getting is the real one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the key. Yeah. I noticed that a lot when, it gets really awkward. It's not directed, then there's not enough of that, back and forth. It's like very one-sided
It's
conversation.
one-sided. Yeah. It's just one question. But usually one question won't get you the emotions, right? One question in one direction or one subject will just get you a very surface level answer, sorry. So you will have to dig a little bit more, right? And I've seen a lot of something I've noticed is a lot of people ask a question, they hear an emotion, and they go, check, I got an emotion out of him. But it's not the first few answers, even though you hear, it's a difficult situation, they don't feel the words they're saying. But you hear an emotion, and then as a salesperson, you move on. But dig for it. Go a little more granular, right?
Yeah.
That's where you actually get the prospect emotional. The first few answers will usually be still rational, right? And
yeah. It's just words that come out of their mouth. Isn't it?
Yeah. How are you feeling? I'm feeling good. Did you really feel good, or was it just an answer, right? It was obviously not felt. So dig for it. And you'll find out that the next 2-3 questions in the same direction will yield more emotions.
Well, yeah. How emotional was it when you were in banking? Was it emotional? Like, because we're talking, like, what would a sales cycle be like, say at the bank? And
that's a great question. Wow. Yeah. So you're taking me back a few years, right? But it was, so certain transactions were the sales cycle, depending on the products I was trading, I had what was called flow products, which were very quick trades. We would client would call through and we would trade within a minute and a half, two maybe. So not very emotional. And you would have to be extremely precise, extremely fast. It's short and scripted, trade done, move on.
Yeah.
But I would have a lot of other trades which would take a lot longer because I was working in what's called fixed income. So fixed income is dealing all with the bonds, liabilities, and assets of these large institutional investors. So my job also involved in becoming a little bit more strategic. So and having longer conversation with prospects about clients with their positioning, right? Their assets and liabilities management, and those conversations could be more emotional, and you had to be very nurturing because you would uncover certain problems that their balance sheets had. And even though it's a company, it means someone made a mistake or they're exposed, right? So you had to be cautious about how you approach these conversations. And again, we usually investment bankers were not seen as safe, right? Same story, right? A lot of my colleagues showed up in three-piece suits, fancy watches, to local banks in Austria, Germany, and it was creating threat, right? These wealthy bankers showing up, and I won't trust them, right? Even though the other side was a banker or a CFO or whatever, they would always look at us as a little bit threatening, right? We're going to just rip them apart on some big trades and take the money and run away. So a lot of what I was doing as well is that I think that I was reflecting on why I was successful at it. Is I was able to become more and more successful in my career, but I would never show that to any of my clients. It would never spill into the conversations I had with them. They never felt threatened. They never felt they couldn't share something with me. And sometimes the most interesting trades, the most profitable trades were the trades where we uncovered a big problem in the client's balance sheet or positioning, and they would want to share it with us because they had to open up their books, so to speak, right? So they would have to share with us, like, we have a boo-boo here. Can we do something about it, right? And then we would come up with solutions on that. And they would want discretion. They would want us to not ridicule them and go like, how the heck did you end up in that hole, right? That would not be, and they would not want anybody else to know about this, right? Because their company was vulnerable.
Companies,
So this is how you build over time a non-threatening relationship with those clients. And I had some really big transactions which I've done, which I'm looking back still very proud of. Really big transactions that I did. And
what are some of the biggest that you had? In terms of like these institutional investments into like bonds and different assets.
So I've done. I was on interest rate derivatives, so interest rate flows and derivatives. But I also was selling any sort of bonds. I touched everything. I became very general. I could touch any product within the fixed income division. You remember I told you I was curious? There was a trader with a book. I would find out where he trade, and I would find my client if he traded it. And I would somehow always find a way to make a trade in any sort of product available to me. But I specialize on interest rate and interest rate derivatives and foreign exchange and long-dated foreign exchange derivatives. And the transaction size, wow, okay. The numbers are going to be, for some of the listeners, a bit bigger. Some of the biggest transactions I've done on flow products was one was a swap 10 years, 1 billion.
Oh, wow.
1 billion euro. It was a relatively quick transaction, complex in terms of size. We were exposed when we put on that trade.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of slightly more complex, I sold we called it the CFXO, so a complex interest rate product that we built at Merrill Lynch. And we sold another 1.2 billion of that.
Wow.
my boss and I and a third person, all over Europe and the Middle East. I sold on my last year around 500 million of in foreign exchange algorithmic strategy as well, and in different tickets, anything from 50 to 100 million. The number was big.
Yeah.
And that's why the tiny little numbers at the end, when you say 3.48, you needed to make sure that the tiny numbers in the back were spot on, because you would have big losses. And we were not allowed mistakes.
Yes.
But that's the one thing. Again, in my entire career, I traded everything, but I had never made a mistake, and it created a lot of trust internally with my traders, because they knew I was protecting the bank by being precise. And that was kind of key, because again, it's funny that in sales here in high ticket, we have marketing versus sales. There's always like who's right and wrong. And in investment banking, we had trading versus sales, right? Right, trader was making money and saying the sales guys are shit, they can't sell, and vice versa, we can't trade. And we had that fight there, right? And I figured, right, I need my traders to trust me. Like same in high ticket space. You want your marketing guy to trust you, right? So and vice versa, because that's how you can make a change in the business, right? We need to trust each other. Yeah. So those transactions were big. Cool. Yeah, they were big, and revenues. We would talk about that, but like the biggest revenues I generated for the bank at Credit Suisse was I generated on 1 year over $22 million for the bank. So
it's crazy numbers when you're talking like institutional, but to them it's it's fairly normalized, isn't it? Like with the way that transactions that they do, but some of them not
the
so
size, much. Yes, the profits are made on. I was fairly good at spotting good trades and building trust. So I was able to do very good trades and lowering the risks that we were putting on. So I had very successful career there. Came also with I paid a price for it as well, right? It was not all, but I had a fast career. I made considerable amount of money for the firm. But you see now, in hindsight, I think if I would have had a slower career, it almost would have been better. I think I value patience a lot more now than I used to. I was very hungry. I wanted to achieve things very, very quickly. And I think now I'm a lot more patient. You can't... there's a certain process that needs time within yourself, and you can't speed it up. It's going to catch up with you. So
okay, I understand. I see what you mean. It's like that sometimes, and sometimes the fast pace of the online space is not actually that fast paced. It's actually very, very slow, right? Or, I mean, there's different versions of slow. Where some people probably think it's like lead flow is slow, but the actual life itself is relatively calm, or can be calm.
Yeah.
What are you seeing at the moment in terms of where sales professionals can either utilize their skills, other than selling, or trying to find or land like better opportunities? Where do you kind of see the space going in that?
Well, very good question. Again, Patrick, I think most of us are, most of the guys I know are fairly young, right? Again, what I'm saying is don't rush it. All the skills you're acquiring now, you'll use them for life if you're smart, right? So mature them, understand what you're doing. Again, all of these negotiation skills, learn them over time. Don't try to be too quick about your results. Don't be too results oriented. See this as a massive opportunity to learn, because once you've learned sales and negotiation, for me are hand in hand. High ticket space disappears. You go anywhere else. Any company, anything will always need a sales force.
Yes.
And if you build enough maturity and knowledge, you can use it for everyday life. And so don't be I'm almost trying to say, don't be worried about the speed. Be worried about your journey in this your learning journey in that space.
Mm.
What I'm really fascinated about is how much in the high ticket space people invest in themselves. That's honestly, that's fantastic.
Mm.
In the corporate world, we don't, or we didn't.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would
Oh,
agree with that.
people don't. They can't. They don't pay for a coach. They don't pay for mentoring. They don't. They're not curious about it. No, they don't. And I'm so surprised that so many people at 27, 25, whatever their age, at young age, they don't
Mm.
mind investing in themselves. And I really admire that, because I know that in my career in the corporate world, nobody invested
Yes.
in themselves.
I
I
did
didn't
not pay
invest
for
it
it.
in myself.
I, did,
I didn't.
I didn't invest at all.
No. I know it's crazy. And now I'm looking at these young guys, and they're hungry for information, and they're curious, and they try. It's that's fantastic. And I think
Mm.
that's a good spirit, because that's going to, if you use that knowledge well and you learn all these skills over time, you in the real world you can apply any of this.
Mm.
I mean, I've just for an example, I have friends that have restaurants here in Guatemala, and one of them is a very good friend of mine, and she's responsible to negotiate all the lately renegotiate rents and new
Mm.
spaces and everything. And she came to me and for help, and she had amazing results by just
Mm.
changing the attitude and not seeing a negotiation or rent negotiation, whatever, the place negotiation as a fight, but as a
Mm.
discovery process.
Mm.
And all the skills that you learn here, you can use them anywhere else, and you can
Mm.
advise people and use these skills for any other space in the real world.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and I think, I mean, this itself is actually probably a big point. It's a good thing, and also an opportunity missed. I think so. Like with what you said, all the skills that you learn and apply in the online high ticket, there's opportunity out there to apply in the real world.
Yeah,
I think sometimes where the balance is a little bit steered to one side is not everyone is able to implement the things that they learn.
they
You and
learn.
I, where we learn on the spot, right? Like we kind of try things. Oh, that didn't work. So
Yeah,
what do I do? Let me try this, or let me say
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
instead next time. It's you kind of self coach, through just reflection. And if you're inclined
Yeah.
to learn from others, then that's a good thing. I think sort of what happens now is that there's so much information that people get overwhelmed with information. They don't know
That's
what
true.
to implement, and they never get to try any of it to say that, hey, this works for me. It might not work for you, but this works for me. Or there's a little bit of that missing, I think. What in your opinion, because you work and you coach some salespeople on a one-to-one basis, what is needed, do you think, to go from knowledge to the doing part?
Understand yourself. Understand who you are, why you have a blockage, why you're scared of asking certain questions. So that's more, again, an introspective work.
Mm, yeah.
I've done 12, 13 years of Jungian studies on myself, and I have my own coach on that
Mm,
for 12
yes.
years. So I've done a lot of work on myself. So
Mm,
when I know I have a blockage, I know where it comes from, and I analyze it. It's like, why am I scared of things? Why
yes.
is there a blockage? And
Yeah.
I know it's me, and I see that in a
Mm,
lot of my students. Is usually they have the knowledge, but there's something inside. Usually it's a fear, or maybe it's a trauma, whatever it is that
mm,
prevents them from using that skill set,
that
or
thing.
that knowledge, and
Mm,
they're afraid that
yes.
there's a little voice inside that says, like, don't do that, or you're
Yes.
not good enough, or whatever it is. So and I think it takes time as well, right? The more often you fail, at one stage you're going to recognize that it's not the external world which is mean, it's you who refuses to change, right? And
Yes.
with time, you automatically should want to improve certain things.
Mm,
But I think it's mainly understanding yourself. understanding your, it's going to sound deep, but it's the unconscious side, right? Most of it is unconscious. We
Yes.
do most, our lives are mostly run by our unconscious side. So the more you explore that, the more you make it conscious, the more you can recognize your patterns and accept them and overcome them. But it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's pretty solid because there is a lot of information out there that is absorbed, but
Yeah.
not put back out. I think,
No.
and then you just get a bloat of information, and you don't know what to do with it.
No, that's true. That's true, and it's only
but
going to get worse because also the amount of, I'm a bit older than you too, right? But I had books, and I realized years ago I could read and read and read, and my attention span through Instagram and all these things reduced itself, right?
Sure.
Every story now needs to be 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, I need to get the gist quick.
No, it's short and shorter, right? So like opening a book, sitting down, reading, that's tough now. Isn't it? Like three pages down, your mind was gone and you left it. So I would also recommend, and I try to do that, just detox from fast social media things, and pen and paper. I have lots of pen and paper. I use a lot of it. And books, sometimes just a physical book, just to try to calm your mind down and learn that way again, right? And feel things. Take time to sense and feel things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to your resistance, and write them down. Why am I blocked? What is it about me and being scared of asking these questions? Is it because as a child I was told not to do this? I'm afraid of being judged, or whatever it is. All these things, all these little fears, they are inside that prevent you from growing at that particular time.
Yeah.
And as a mentor or coach, it's about being gentle with the students, because we all fight our own little battles inside. So
yes,
being careful, gentle, and empathetic to actually allow them to want to explore that side, because it's scary. It's scary to go into your past and uncover that you've run most of your life unconsciously, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's a whole new chapter then that unfolds, doesn't it?
That's a big chapter.
That's a big chapter. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. What's the plan for you sort of in the next 12 months? Like, what have you got in store for Mathieu?
Yeah, I want to coach. To be honest with you, I want to coach more. I always wanted to coach. That was a big consideration of mine. I was always thinking more about all that mindset and that Jungian studies and everything. But I'm realizing that everything is interconnected, in the sense that cells and psychology, it's the same. It's all about communication. It's how you communicate. So I'm a bit older. I'm 47. So I have some experiences, and all my experiences come together now, allowing me to be, I think, a bit more patient, a bit more understanding, and better at helping others uncover certain limitations or certain misbeliefs they have. So I love the coaching part. It's highly fulfilling for me, because it's allowing others to empowering others. Right?
Yeah,
and being a bit of I would love to be a bit more of a role model, if you want. That's a big word, but like, I had my own coach. I told you, and I still have for 12 years, more on the psychological part. He's British, Lloyd Miller, fantastic human being. That kind of honestly turned my life around, and because he guided me through these last 12, 13 years, and I would love to be able to do that for others. That they just go like, that was a transformative experience, and then I can use it in the sales world. I can use it with my wife. I can use it with my girlfriend, with my parents, whoever it is. That you become a better communicator, and therefore better man, better human being, better. Doesn't have to be only men, but better woman, but like a better version of yourself.
Better
less
person, yeah.
traumatized, less unconscious, and you'll see on sales calls you can do just the same, right?
Yeah. 100%. Cool.
And then personally continue to grow as much as I can. There's so much knowledge out there. There's so much knowledge. I love Chris Voss. I don't know if you know Chris Voss.
I got his book back there.
Oh yeah, God, my God. I think he is
smart guy. Very smart.
Beyond. It's insane. All the skills that you can learn from him are applicable anywhere. So meet Chris Voss. If I could meet Chris Voss and start reversing him, I think when I'll do that,
I reckon I'll
label him or whatever.
I could have it.